She grew up in a world that did not always make it easy for someone like her to succeed. From an early age, she learned the value of hard work, determination, and resilience. Her childhood was filled with lessons that would shape her future, watching her parents balance multiple jobs, seeing the struggles of people around her, and understanding that success was not something given, it was something earned. Despite facing challenges that could have held her back, she developed an unshakable belief in her own abilities, a quiet confidence that would later define her leadership style. In school, she was not only academically bright but also deeply curious about how things worked. She asked questions others were afraid to ask, seeking to understand the why behind every rule, process, and decision. While her peers were focused on fitting in, she was thinking ahead, dreaming big, and imagining a future where she could make a difference. Her teachers noticed her potential early on. They encouraged her to pursue opportunities others might have overlooked, helping her gain confidence that she could navigate spaces that were often dominated by people with more privilege, connections, or resources. When she entered college, she gravitated toward business and finance, fields that fascinated her because they combined strategy, problem-solving, and the chance to create impact on a large scale. She studied late into the night, balancing part-time jobs with her studies, learning not just from textbooks but from observing how real businesses operated. Internships gave her practical experience, showing her the challenges and complexities of banking and corporate leadership. These early experiences taught her that success in the business world required more than intelligence, it demanded courage, resilience, and the ability to make difficult decisions under pressure. Her first professional role was challenging, but it set the tone for the rest of her career. She quickly realized that being capable was not always enough, she had to prove herself constantly, sometimes in ways that her male colleagues did not. Yet, instead of becoming discouraged, she used every challenge as a learning opportunity. She built networks carefully, sought mentors who could guide her, and most importantly, maintained her integrity even when shortcuts or compromises seemed easier. Her reputation grew as someone who delivered results while remaining principled, and soon, her work began to speak louder than any obstacle in her path. What truly set her apart, however, was her vision. From the start, she dreamed not just of advancing her own career but of transforming the institutions she worked for. She believed that banks and businesses could do more than make money, they could empower communities, create opportunities for underrepresented groups, and change the way people thought about leadership. This vision became her driving force, guiding her decisions and inspiring those around her. People began to notice her ability to combine sharp financial insight with a sense of purpose that was rare in the corporate world. As she climbed the ranks, she encountered moments that could have derailed someone less determined. She faced skepticism, bias, and sometimes outright hostility, simply because she did not fit the traditional mold of a corporate executive. Many assumed she would fail or be easily intimidated, but she quietly proved them wrong at every turn. She learned to navigate office politics with skill, turning challenges into opportunities and earning respect not through confrontation but through competence, persistence, and intelligence. Her colleagues started to see her as a leader who could be trusted with responsibility and someone who inspired confidence even in difficult situations. Eventually, her reputation and achievements led her to an extraordinary opportunity, the chance to lead her own bank. This was a dream she had nurtured for years, a culmination of all the hard work, sacrifices, and lessons she had embraced along the way. Becoming a CEO was not just a personal milestone, it was a historic moment. As a black woman in a position of immense power and influence, she represented something larger than herself, the possibilities for others who had been overlooked, underestimated, or marginalized. Her appointment was celebrated widely, symbolizing progress in a world where leadership diversity was still limited, and it became clear that she was not just another executive, she was a trailblazer. Even as she assumed this role, she remained grounded. She knew that her journey had only begun and that leading a bank would bring new challenges far greater than anything she had faced before. But she embraced the responsibility with confidence and vision, determined to leave a mark that would inspire generations to come. Her rise was not a story of luck or privilege, it was a testament to courage, intelligence, persistence, and the ability to dream bigger than the limitations others tried to impose. She had earned her place at the top, and everyone who had doubted her would soon see that this was only the beginning of an extraordinary journey. After stepping into her new role as CEO, she knew that the real challenge was just beginning. Leading a bank was not simply about holding a title, it was about transforming the entire institution, shaping its culture, and steering it toward growth in a highly competitive and often unforgiving industry. From her very first day, she approached the task with the same determination that had carried her through her entire life. She spent hours studying every aspect of the bank's operations, listening to employees at every level, and observing how decisions were made. She understood that true leadership required more than strategy, it required understanding people, building trust, and inspiring confidence in even the most skeptical minds. Her vision for the bank was ambitious but clear. She wanted it to be more than a financial institution that processed transactions. She wanted it to be a place where innovation met opportunity, where customers felt genuinely supported, and where employees were empowered to take ownership of their roles. She believed that a bank could be a force for good, not just profit, and this philosophy became the foundation of her leadership. She introduced new initiatives aimed at improving customer experience, supporting small businesses, and expanding services to underserved communities. Her focus on inclusivity and innovation quickly set the bank apart from competitors, and people began to take notice. One of her first major steps was assembling a team that shared her vision. She understood that no leader could achieve greatness alone, so she carefully chose executives and managers who were not only skilled but also aligned with her values. She encouraged collaboration, open communication, and creative problem-solving, creating an environment where employees felt valued and motivated. Under her guidance, the bank began to develop a culture of accountability and innovation, where risks were calculated and successes were celebrated. Employees began to see that their work mattered in a larger context, and this sense of purpose fueled extraordinary performance across the company. She also recognized the importance of technology in modern banking. While many institutions relied on outdated systems, she invested in upgrading the bank's infrastructure, implementing digital solutions that made services faster, safer, and more accessible. From mobile banking apps to online financial tools, her initiatives improved customer convenience while demonstrating that the bank was forward-thinking and adaptable. These technological changes were not merely cosmetic, they transformed the way the bank operated, allowing it to compete with larger, more established institutions on an equal footing. As the bank began to thrive under her leadership, she faced challenges that tested her resolve. There were skeptics both inside and outside the company who doubted her ability to lead effectively. Some questioned her strategies, others her vision, and a few even tried to undermine her authority. But she remained focused, treating criticism as an opportunity to improve and letting results speak louder than words. Each success, whether it was a profitable quarter, a satisfied customer, or a motivated employee, became evidence that her approach was working. Slowly but surely, the bank's reputation grew stronger, and so did her credibility as a transformative leader. Her efforts went beyond numbers and profits. She made it a priority to mentor rising talent, especially young women and minority professionals who often faced obstacles in climbing the corporate ladder. She believed that creating opportunities for others was a vital part of leadership. Her mentorship programs and internal development initiatives not only nurtured new leaders but also strengthened the bank's culture, ensuring that excellence and innovation would continue even in her absence. Her impact was being felt not just in the balance sheets, but in the lives of employees, customers, and the communities the bank served. By the end of her first year as CEO, the transformation was undeniable. The bank had grown financially, technologically, and culturally. Customers were happier, employees were more engaged, and the industry had begun to take notice of her as a bold, visionary leader who refused to accept the status quo. She had not only survived the pressures of leadership but had turned them into an opportunity to redefine what a bank could be. Her journey of building the bank from the inside out was a testament to her courage, intelligence, and unwavering commitment to her principles. Even as she celebrated these achievements, she knew the path ahead would not be easy. Challenges, both expected and unforeseen, awaited her, and she would need all her resilience and strategic thinking to continue pushing the bank forward. But for now, she had proven one thing clearly: with vision, determination, and the right team, it was possible to turn a struggling institution into a beacon of innovation, success, and hope for the future. Just when it seemed that everything was falling into place, the world she had carefully built began to tremble. The bank, under her leadership, was thriving, its employees inspired, its customers loyal, and its reputation growing stronger by the day. Yet, behind closed doors, forces were quietly gathering, forces that would challenge not just her position, but her very sense of trust in the people around her. She had always known that corporate leadership came with risks, but nothing could have prepared her for the shock that awaited. It started subtly at first. Meetings that once included her were suddenly scheduled without her, emails that once received prompt responses went unanswered, and key decisions began to be made without her knowledge. She noticed the change immediately: the shift in tone, the undercurrents of tension, and the quiet glances exchanged by some board members. At first, she tried to brush it off, thinking it might be normal corporate politics or minor disagreements. But deep down, she felt the unmistakable weight of something far more serious, a calculated move to edge her out. The first clear sign of betrayal came during a board meeting. What had always been a place for discussion and collaboration turned into a carefully orchestrated session where her authority was questioned at every turn. Board members, some of whom had been close allies, suddenly voiced doubts about her leadership, her decisions, and even her vision for the bank. The accusations were subtle, wrapped in polite language, but the message was clear: they wanted her out. Shocked and hurt, she realized that she was facing an orchestrated effort to remove her from the very institution she had built and nurtured. Her mind raced as she tried to understand how this could happen. She had worked tirelessly to create a culture of transparency, integrity, and collaboration. She had celebrated every success with her team and believed she had earned their trust and respect. Yet, here she was, blindsided by people who had once promised loyalty. The betrayal cut deep, not only because of the professional threat but because of the personal trust she had placed in those around her. She felt the sting of realizing that even in the most supportive environments, ambition, jealousy, and politics could turn allies into opponents. Despite the shock, she did not panic. Years of overcoming challenges had taught her one crucial lesson: adversity was not a signal to give up, it was a signal to prepare. She spent sleepless nights analyzing the situation, documenting every interaction, and trying to anticipate the next moves of those plotting against her. She knew that reacting impulsively could make matters worse. Instead, she chose a path of strategy and patience, determined to confront the betrayal not with emotion, but with evidence, clarity, and resolve. The removal process itself was swift and ruthless. One morning, she received the formal notice: she was being ousted from her position as CEO, effective immediately. The message was cold, almost clinical, devoid of the recognition of the years of hard work and achievements she had contributed to the bank. It was a gut-wrenching moment, the kind that made her question everything she had built and fought for. For the first time in her career, she felt powerless, watching as the institution she had transformed seemed to slip away before her eyes. Yet, even in that moment of pain, a spark of determination ignited within her. She refused to let the betrayal define her or erase the impact she had made. If anything, this unexpected setback strengthened her resolve. She realized that the battle was no longer just about her position, it was about justice, fairness, and protecting the integrity of the work she had devoted her life to. The stage was set for a fight that would test her courage, her intelligence, and her ability to navigate a world that often favored those who played by different rules. In the days that followed, she gathered herself, reaching out to trusted advisors and allies outside the immediate circle of betrayal. She began to explore legal avenues, understanding that reclaiming her position, or at least securing accountability, would require careful planning and a strong team. The betrayal that had initially felt like an insurmountable blow slowly transformed into a call to action, a challenge that demanded every ounce of her leadership, resilience, and strategic thinking. The unexpected betrayal, though devastating, became the defining moment of her journey. It revealed not weakness, but the strength and clarity that often emerge only in the face of adversity. And while the corporate world might have thought they could remove her so easily, she was already laying the groundwork for a comeback that would not just restore her position but redefine the rules of the game entirely. The moment she was ousted, the world she had meticulously built seemed to crumble around her. Yet, even in the midst of what felt like total defeat, she refused to succumb to despair. She understood something crucial: challenges were inevitable, but the way one faced them defined the outcome. Losing her position was not just a professional blow, it was a test of her resilience, strategy, and ability to navigate the harsh realities of corporate politics. For days, she wrestled with a storm of emotions. Shock gave way to anger, and anger gave way to a burning determination. She reflected on every meeting, every decision, and every relationship she had built within the bank. None of it had been for nothing. She reminded herself that the skills, vision, and leadership that had brought her to the top still existed within her, even if the title was temporarily stripped away. The loss, painful as it was, became a lens through which she could see the situation more clearly, a challenge to be studied and mastered rather than a defeat to mourn. She began by taking stock of her options. The corporate world was filled with politics, and any misstep could weaken her position further. She knew she could not act impulsively. Instead, she focused on gathering information, internal communications, board meeting notes, emails, and performance reports. Every detail became a piece of the puzzle, revealing how and why the betrayal had been orchestrated. She realized that understanding the motives and strategies of those who had turned against her would be key to turning the tide. Patience became her weapon, and preparation her shield. Alongside this meticulous planning, she leaned on her inner circle of trusted advisors. These were people who knew her strengths, her vision, and her values, and who could provide both strategic guidance and emotional support. They reminded her that she was not alone and that the fight ahead was winnable if approached with intelligence and resolve. She also sought external experts, including legal consultants and corporate strategists, who could provide insight into the mechanisms of boardroom power and corporate governance. She began assembling a strategy that combined legal action, negotiation, and public positioning to reclaim not just her title but the integrity of her leadership. While she focused on the tactical aspects of her challenge, she also paid attention to her personal resilience. She knew that navigating such a high-stakes situation would test her emotionally and mentally. She set routines to maintain her clarity, including meditation, exercise, and time with family and mentors. These small practices grounded her, keeping her focused on the bigger picture rather than being consumed by the immediate pain of betrayal. Her mindset became her anchor. She would not be defined by the actions of those who sought to undermine her, but by how she responded to them. At the same time, she had to confront a new reality, the perception of others. Losing her position could easily be spun as a failure or weakness. She understood the importance of controlling her narrative, both within the industry and among the public. Carefully, she reached out to allies, industry contacts, and stakeholders, presenting herself as a leader committed to justice and integrity, rather than bitterness or retaliation. Every communication was strategic, reinforcing her credibility, professionalism, and unwavering commitment to her vision for the bank. Through all of this, she discovered an unexpected strength. The challenge forced her to grow in ways she had never anticipated. She sharpened her strategic thinking, learned to anticipate moves before they happened, and built alliances with people who had been outside her immediate circle. She realized that adversity was revealing the depth of her leadership, showing her not only what she was capable of professionally but also personally. The betrayal that had once seemed insurmountable now became a catalyst for transformation, teaching lessons that no success alone could provide. By the end of this period, she was no longer reacting out of shock or fear. She had transformed her frustration into strategy, her anger into focus, and her pain into purpose. She understood that reclaiming her position would not be easy, but she also knew she had the tools, the intellect, and the support network to do it. The challenge ahead was daunting, but for the first time, she felt fully ready to face it, not as a victim of circumstance, but as a leader plotting a comeback that would be as decisive as it was inspiring. As the reality of her ousting settled in, she realized that strategy alone would not be enough to reclaim her position. She needed experts, people who understood the complex legal and corporate landscape, who could turn the tables in a battle that had already been stacked against her. That's when her legal team entered the picture, a group of sharp, experienced professionals who shared her determination and vision. They were not just lawyers, they were strategists, problem solvers, and relentless advocates who could navigate the complicated terrain of corporate law and boardroom politics with precision. From their very first meeting, it was clear that this was going to be a different kind of fight. The legal team approached the situation methodically, breaking down every detail of her ousting, reviewing contracts, board resolutions, and internal communications. Nothing was overlooked. They identified inconsistencies in the process, questionable motives behind certain decisions, and procedural missteps that could be challenged. For the first time since her removal, she felt a spark of hope. This team could not only defend her position but actively work to reverse the injustice she had suffered. The CEO quickly developed a strong rapport with her legal advisors. They didn't just offer advice, they listened, understood her perspective, and aligned their strategy with her broader vision for the bank. It was not enough to win legally, she wanted to emerge with her credibility intact, her authority reaffirmed, and her reputation stronger than ever. Together, they crafted a plan that balanced legal precision with strategic public positioning, understanding that perception in the corporate world could be as powerful as the law itself. Preparation became their mantra. Days and nights were spent compiling evidence, drafting letters, and outlining arguments that highlighted the procedural violations and breaches of fiduciary responsibility that had led to her removal. They meticulously mapped out every step, anticipating counterarguments and preparing responses for every possible scenario. The process was exhaustive, but it was also empowering. With each document reviewed and strategy session completed, she felt her confidence return. The legal team had become more than advisors, they were a source of strength, turning what had seemed like an insurmountable obstacle into a battle she could approach strategically and confidently. While the legal preparations were underway, they also considered the broader implications. This was more than just a personal fight, it was a moment that could influence corporate culture, leadership accountability, and minority representation in executive roles. Every argument, every motion filed, was crafted not only to protect her position but to send a clear message that unfair ousting and discriminatory practices would not go unchallenged. This understanding added a deeper purpose to their work. She was no longer just fighting for herself, she was fighting for principles, fairness, and the future of equitable leadership in the corporate world. The legal team also became her sounding board, offering calm and rational perspectives during moments of doubt or frustration. Their experience allowed them to separate emotion from strategy, helping her navigate the storm with clarity. She learned to channel her anger into meticulous preparation, her fear into careful planning, and her desire for justice into actionable steps that would strengthen her case. It was a partnership built on trust, mutual respect, and a shared goal, to flip the script and reclaim what had been unjustly taken. As the first legal motions were filed, momentum began to shift. The board, who had assumed her removal would be uncontested, now faced a leader and team who were organized, knowledgeable, and unrelenting. The initial surprise and confusion on their part gave her an unexpected advantage. While they had relied on secrecy, manipulation, and speed, she now had transparency, preparation, and strategic patience on her side. The narrative was slowly changing, the story was no longer about a CEO who had been ousted, but about a leader who refused to be silenced, undermined, or erased. By the end of this phase, it was clear that the legal team was not just a part of her strategy, they were the engine driving her comeback. They had transformed her shock and betrayal into a structured plan, providing the tools and expertise necessary to confront the corporate forces aligned against her. For the first time since her ousting, she felt the tide turning. What had once seemed like a crushing defeat now appeared as an opportunity to demonstrate not just her resilience, but her ability to fight with intelligence, foresight, and unwavering determination. The legal battle began with an intensity that caught the board and the bank's executives off guard. What they had assumed would be a quiet, uncontested removal suddenly turned into a full-scale confrontation. The CEO, once seen as sidelined, now re-emerged as a formidable force, backed by a team of legal experts who knew exactly how to leverage the rules, the evidence, and public opinion. Each step of the process was carefully calculated, and the stakes could not have been higher. Court filings, board meetings, and legal motions became the new battlegrounds. Every argument she presented, every piece of evidence submitted, was meticulously documented to expose the irregularities in her removal. Emails that had been overlooked, meetings conducted without proper procedure, and inconsistent statements by board members were all analyzed and highlighted. The CEO was no longer a passive victim, she was an active strategist, working closely with her team to anticipate counterarguments and prepare airtight responses. The corporate forces that had ousted her were now on the defensive, and the balance of power had begun to shift. The tension escalated as negotiations began behind closed doors. Lawyers for both sides engaged in intense discussions, trying to find a path forward without losing face. But it quickly became clear that the CEO was not interested in compromise at the expense of justice. Every action she took was calculated to protect her leadership, her legacy, and the principles she had fought for throughout her career. Her legal team skillfully combined strategy with persuasion, ensuring that each move was as precise as it was forceful. The CEO, once thought to be outmaneuvered, was now driving the narrative. Public perception also became a key element in the battle. Word began to spread about her removal and the circumstances surrounding it. Through careful communication, she managed to control the narrative, emphasizing her achievements, her integrity, and the unfairness of her ousting. The public and industry stakeholders started to question the actions of the board and executives who had pushed her out. Suddenly, the fight was no longer just internal, it was a story that drew attention, support, and respect from beyond the walls of the bank. Inside the courtroom and boardroom, the pressure was relentless. Days were long, arguments were intense, and every detail mattered. She observed the reactions of the board members, noting subtle shifts in their demeanor and statements. Even the most confident of her opponents began to feel the impact of her meticulously prepared case. Their strategy, which had relied on speed, secrecy, and authority, was unraveling under the precision and determination of her legal approach. Each small victory, whether a procedural win or a concession from the board, fueled her resolve. The CEO also learned to leverage her unique perspective as an outsider within the system. She understood the human elements of corporate decision-making, pride, fear, and the desire to maintain appearances. She and her legal team used these insights strategically, applying pressure at moments that would have the greatest psychological and practical effect. It was a delicate balance, asserting authority without creating unnecessary conflict, but she had mastered it through years of navigating complex corporate environments. Throughout the legal battle, she remained calm, composed, and unwavering. While the opposition tried to portray her as emotional or reactive, she presented herself as rational, focused, and principled. Every decision reinforced her credibility and emphasized the contrast between leadership grounded in integrity and those motivated by self-interest. Observers began to recognize that this was not merely a legal fight, it was a demonstration of what strong, ethical leadership could look like in the face of adversity. As the weeks passed, it became clear that the CEO's strategy was succeeding. The opposition, once confident in their plan, now faced a challenge they had underestimated. The courtroom exchanges, the documented evidence, and the strategic pressure applied by her team all contributed to a turning tide. The CEO, once ousted and seemingly powerless, had transformed into the dominant force, not through brute strength, but through intelligence, preparation, and an unyielding commitment to justice. By the end of this phase, the legal battle had set the stage for a dramatic reversal. The CEO had not only defended her position but demonstrated that resilience, strategy, and integrity could overcome even the most calculated betrayals. What had begun as a devastating setback had evolved into a story of empowerment, proving that leadership is defined not by the obstacles faced, but by how one rises to confront them. The day of reckoning arrived with a tension that could be felt in every corner of the corporate world. What had once seemed like a crushing defeat for the CEO was now the moment she had been preparing for. The months of legal preparation, strategic planning, and unwavering focus had led to this turning point. The opposition, confident in their earlier maneuvers, was now facing a leader who had not only survived the storm but was ready to reclaim her power with precision and authority. As she entered the boardroom, she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had seen the worst and emerged stronger. Every detail, every argument, every piece of evidence had been rehearsed, reviewed, and strategically positioned. She was no longer the CEO who had been ousted, she was a force to be reckoned with, a leader backed by a team that understood the stakes and was ready to execute flawlessly. The room, filled with board members and legal representatives, was charged with anticipation. Eyes that had once questioned her now watched with a mixture of surprise and unease. Her legal team presented their findings with clarity and authority. They outlined the procedural errors, the inconsistencies in decision-making, and the violations that had led to her removal. Each point was backed by irrefutable evidence, leaving little room for dispute. Board members who had orchestrated her ousting realized, with growing concern, that their carefully laid plans were unraveling. The CEO, calm and composed, watched as the narrative shifted before her eyes. The balance of power had changed. What truly made the difference was the CEO's presence and demeanor. She spoke not with anger or accusation, but with clarity, reason, and a focus on fairness and integrity. Her words reminded everyone of the vision she had brought to the bank, the progress she had achieved, and the leadership she had demonstrated. The room was forced to confront a simple truth: the removal had been unjust, and the person at the center of the storm was not only capable of leading but deserving of the position she had earned. Negotiations followed, intense but guided by the unmistakable strength she now projected. The board realized that resisting her would be futile, both legally and in terms of public perception. Slowly, the tide turned. Concessions were made, agreements reached, and the path to reinstatement became clear. What had once seemed impossible was now within reach, a testament to meticulous preparation, strategic thinking, and unshakable determination. When the final decision came, it was more than a personal victory. The CEO was reinstated, not as a return to the status quo, but as a reaffirmation of her authority and vision. The board's recognition of their errors, the legal team's strategic brilliance, and her own resilience combined to create a moment that would be remembered for years. She had flipped the script entirely, from being sidelined and doubted to reclaiming her position with dignity, authority, and a renewed sense of purpose. The victory was not only professional but profoundly symbolic. It sent a powerful message to the corporate world: injustice, bias, and manipulation could be challenged and overcome. For minority leaders, women in corporate positions, and anyone who had faced unfair treatment, her triumph became a beacon of possibility and hope. She had demonstrated that leadership was not just about titles or authority, but about courage, strategy, and the refusal to accept defeat in the face of adversity. As she resumed her role, she brought with her a new perspective. The ordeal had tested her in ways she could never have anticipated, but it had also strengthened her resolve and sharpened her strategic acumen. She approached her work with renewed energy, more intentional leadership, and a deeper commitment to fairness, transparency, and empowerment. The bank, once again under her guidance, thrived, now with a culture that respected resilience, accountability, and integrity more than ever before. This moment of flipping the script became the defining chapter of her career. It was not merely about reclaiming a title, it was about demonstrating that true leadership is proven in times of crisis, that justice can prevail, and that determination, coupled with strategy and support, can overcome even the most calculated betrayals. The CEO's journey was no longer just a story of individual triumph, it had become a lesson in resilience, courage, and the transformative power of refusing to be defeated. With the battle behind her and her position fully restored, the CEO took a moment to reflect on everything she had endured. The months of betrayal, uncertainty, and relentless struggle had been some of the most challenging of her life, yet they had also become her most transformative experiences. She realized that leadership was never just about titles, power, or accolades. It was about resilience, vision, and the ability to navigate both triumph and adversity with integrity. Every obstacle she had faced had strengthened her, and every setback had taught her lessons that no smooth path ever could. Looking back, she understood that her journey had been about more than her personal career. She had become a symbol of perseverance for countless others who had faced injustice, bias, or discrimination. Her story proved that it was possible to challenge systems that seemed unyielding, to reclaim one's rightful place, and to do so with dignity and strategic intelligence. The corporate world, which often undervalued minority leaders, women, and innovators, had witnessed firsthand that talent, determination, and integrity could overcome even the most calculated obstacles. She also reflected on the role of her team, the mentors, advisors, and legal experts who had stood by her side. Their guidance, expertise, and unwavering support had been crucial to her comeback. She realized that no leader achieves greatness alone. True leadership, she had learned, was about building trust, inspiring loyalty, and recognizing the value of collaboration. Every success she celebrated was shared with those who had believed in her vision and worked tirelessly to make it a reality. The lessons she had learned were profound. She understood that adversity would always be a part of any ambitious journey, but it need not define the outcome. She learned to approach challenges with strategy rather than emotion, to see setbacks as opportunities for growth, and to maintain clarity and integrity even when others sought to exploit weaknesses. These insights became not just tools for professional success but guiding principles for her life. They shaped the kind of leader she wanted to be, someone who could inspire, empower, and uplift others while staying true to her values. As she settled back into her role, she also focused on creating a lasting impact beyond immediate results. She initiated programs to mentor young professionals, particularly women and minority leaders who often faced the barriers she had encountered. She emphasized fairness, transparency, and accountability in corporate decision-making, determined to prevent others from facing the kind of betrayal she had endured. Her vision extended beyond profit margins and quarterly reports. It encompassed culture, opportunity, and the creation of pathways for others to succeed. Her experience reshaped the way she approached leadership. She became more attuned to subtle dynamics within the organization, more proactive in addressing conflicts, and more intentional in fostering an environment of respect and empowerment. The challenges that had once threatened to break her now fueled a leadership style defined by resilience, empathy, and strategic foresight. She had learned that true authority was not simply a function of position but a reflection of character, wisdom, and the ability to navigate both adversity and success with grace. Looking ahead, she knew her legacy would not be measured solely by the growth of the bank or the recovery of her position, but by the lessons she could share with others. Her journey had demonstrated the power of perseverance, the importance of strategic thinking, and the value of surrounding oneself with people who believed in your vision. It had shown that setbacks are not the end, but opportunities to rise stronger, smarter, and more determined. Ultimately, she understood that her story was not just about a CEO who reclaimed her position, it was about courage, resilience, and the transformative power of refusing to be defeated. The betrayal she had faced, the legal battles she had fought, and the victories she had earned were all part of a larger narrative, one that would inspire generations of leaders to come. Her rise, her fight, and her triumph became a testament to the idea that integrity, vision, and determination can not only overcome adversity but also leave a lasting impact on the world. And as she looked out over the thriving institution she now led once again, she knew that the journey had only strengthened her purpose. Her story would live on, not just in the boardroom, but in the hearts and minds of everyone who had ever been told they couldn't, shouldn't, or wouldn't. She had flipped the script, reclaimed her power, and left a legacy that would echo far beyond her own remarkable career.